across our whole nation, and the days of militant Islam walking across our country unchallenged are gone. The English Defence League's here.
هذه الفئة من الناس أيضا يحكمها خطاب سياسي.
Are you prepared to die? Imagine your country is conquered by jihad, peacefully or by force. Sharia becomes lawful, and you, an infidel in your homeland, land of your birth, you lose your rights, even your right to life, lose your property, your children, your new masters, the Muslims.
When people are losing their jobs, they want to scapegoat somebody.
And the message they are giving to our Muslim youngsters is that you don't belong here.
The EDL are now being urgently investigated by various police forces attempting to discover who they are and how much of a threat they represent to law and order.
That we are the big majority in this country, and we are not going to allow the Nazis to try to worm their way in to British public life.
Everyone needs to wake up. We're not going anywhere. We're growing in strength. We're growing in number. We will be here next year. We will be here for the next 10 years.
For several years, I've been intrigued by the rise of the far right across Europe. In England, I've watched the emergence of a group called the English Defence League, or EDL. I've tracked down their demonstrations and seen their numbers grow. In 2010, I made a film about this far right-wing group for Al Jazeera's Arabic channel. The EDL declined to be interviewed. The group had largely been ignored by the mainstream media. But that changed after July 22, 2011, when Anders Behring Breivik, a Norwegian right-wing extremist, killed over 70 people in a bombing and shooting spree. Breivik boasted about his links to the EDL in a manifesto he had posted online. Suddenly, the EDL was in the spotlight. Questions have been raised. From where has this group, with a seemingly hate-filled rhetoric, emerged? How has an atmosphere of fear taken root in a country known for its colonial past, and yet today troubled by a gloomy economic future?
It's a very stable community. It really isn't the sort of community, I mean, Muslims have lived here for very long. I was talking to a gentleman who's been here for 30, 40 years, working in the local hospital. Sort of well-established Muslim community who are just part of things. I suppose in some ways it's vulnerable because of the location, and also I think there are some 40, 50 people in the town who are members of EDL.
Danny, not his real name, is a researcher and a member of the anti-fascist forum known as UK Fight Back. He has investigated the English Defence League, but fearing for his life, he spoke to us on the condition that we don't reveal his real identity.
The EDL was co-founded by a former BNP member, who's also a violent criminal. He's called Stephen Yaxley Lennon, but he also uses the name Stephen Lennon and a pseudonym, Tommy Robinson. It was also founded by another guy, a convicted drug dealer, by the name of Paul Ray. Stephen Lennon was photographed attending a BNP meeting with a veteran BNP official and a Holocaust denier by the name of Richard Edmonds. And it was also founded by a member of an openly Nazi group called the November the 9th Society.
Certainly as far as the English Defence League are concerned, they're what's described as an anti-jihad organisation. They came into fruition in about 2008, about May 2008. There was a demonstration by radical Muslim elements at a homecoming parade of British troops in Luton. They've clearly obviously got a website. They've got a fair degree of arrangement, in the sense that they can get fairly large numbers of people, at various different towns throughout the United Kingdom.
أقول إنه تنظيم كبير. كما نشاهد بدأوا ب15 شخص وبسرعة الآن ما يعادل 3000 شخص. أيضا الجميع يحملون الأعلام واللافتات
وأيضا اللافتات تم بعناية دقيقة تم اختيارها بما تناسب القانون البريطاني ولكن جميعها هي معادية للإسلام.
This protest that we've had today by the English Defence is a completely unprecedented event. As far as history is concerned, there really has been nothing that has ever happened like this in Aylesbury.
There are people from outside Aylesbury who are trying to wreck this town, brought in this difficult hour, in this recession. It's probably costing us about £1 million when this £1 million could have been spending on our hospital, our children, our police force. It is unacceptable.
هذه الأحداثية بالفعل هو خطر بالدرجة الأولى ففي كل مرة هناك الشتائم ضد الإسلام.
The preparations for this event, both amongst the police, the local authority, have been absolutely exhaustive and have lasted, for over 2 months. So it's very, very draining on police resources. But obviously, our overall objective is always to ensure public safety.
In a way, it's very sad. It's a vulnerable place in that sense, but we very much hope that they don't come back, to be honest, for the sake of local people and local traders.
That's what people don't. People just want to glorify us as either bigots or whatever. But the problem is, everybody here, no matter what colour you are, has got to live in this town together afterwards, and there is going to be problems in this town afterwards.
This is England.
No, it's the influx of foreign people, the houses, jobs. There's no jobs in Aylesbury.
Not against any race, any religion, any creed, or from where anybody comes from. But we expect people who come to this country to respect what we believe in.
On a membership level, if you look at the friendship networks and the views espoused by many EDL members, supporters on Facebook and YouTube, for example, it's self-evident that they support the BNP. And sometimes violent racism is deeply embedded in the culture of ordinary EDL supporters.
Vote for UKIP. Vote for UKIP.
I believe in the British National Party, and as Nick Griffin says, get up, get out and vote the British National Party.
The EDL say that they're not an anti-Islamic, anti-Muslim organisation, but on the ground you only have to hear some of the chants that occur. Clearly, there's a lot of anti-Muslim sentiment there, and that's being allowed to come out and be expressed in town centres. The community becomes segregated. They were watching from the sidelines and fearing what would happen to them.
There's 2 EDL members who were jailed for inciting racial murder and for making chemical weapons as well. A few EDL supporters have been arrested for carrying weapons. Some have posed with guns and knives for photos that they put on Facebook. But the EDL refer to their local groups using military terminology like divisions.
At the moment, the Muslim community have been under siege from these people. I am a Muslim myself. I'm proud to have served Aylesbury. And I say to the EDL, if you want to have legitimate concerns, I have opened my doors to you. Come and talk to me. No surrender! No surrender! No surrender! But we cannot be prepared for any extremism that they may be applying in wrecking our society or our fabric of British society.
يعتقد على نطاق واسع أن هذه الرابطة على صلة وثيقة بالحزب الوطني البريطاني.
I don't think the EDL was set up by, on the instructions of the BNP chairman Nick Griffin as such. But the EDL was founded and is still led by BNP sympathisers and activists. So at the very least, these people are using the EDL as like a Trojan horse for pushing an extreme right-wing agenda.
The rise of the EDL is interesting, and I wonder if it's because the BNP have now become so focused on gaining seats in councils and targeting them, towards mainstream politics, that they've left a gap behind.
They've obviously got a core membership, but that membership is supported by football hooligans, or what we call in the police football risk elements. So there are a lot of football supporters involved in this organisation.
The EDL developed a leadership of 12 people, I mean, the EDL work very hard to deny they have any connections to Nazis. Core EDL support comes from the same networks of right-wing activists who've plagued British society for decades.
It's really driven by fear, and fear is driven by ignorance. And when you put fear together with ignorance, you get a sort of insecurity.
الحكومة البريطانية في بداية نشأة هذه الرابطة أعلن وزير بريطاني أنها تشكل تهديداً وخطراً على الأمن القومي البريطاني، أيضاً على وحدة الصف في بريطانيا.
The fact is that some senior police officers hold right-wing views, while on the other hand, many police officers spent years being attacked by these same football hooligans who are now running the EDL.
The EDL has organised over 20 protests in English cities, including London, Birmingham and Manchester. Its leaders claim the EDL is a peaceful organisation. As the EDL gains support, Muslim communities have found themselves increasingly targeted.
We have the tactics to deal with these type of protests, but for me as a local commander, it's about the intimidation and the fear that that causes in members of the community. And this is obviously something that's happened throughout the country.
هناك مسؤولين في بريطانيا ضد الإسلام، فهؤلاء انجروا وراء هذا الخطاب السياسي المعادي للإسلام.
This millionaire businessman is Alan Lake. He is believed to be a key funder and a strategist behind the EDL. This video shows Lake speaking at a far-right event in Sweden, warning that Europe is in danger of becoming an Islamic state.
Islamic fundamentalism, as in the Taliban and so on, is opposed to other civilizations. I think that's accepted. And it's opposed and it's a threat in terms of terrorism, warfare and ideology.
The EDL are desperate to link up with Tea Party and Zionist movements, you know, as much as for reasons for hoping to attract American and Jewish money as for any genuinely ideological reasons.
I asked Richard List from the Thames Valley Police why he believes the EDL appears to be growing.
That is a political question which, as a police officer, is very difficult for me to answer. But you know, one would have to say, I mean, if one looks at academic research into these groups, you know, one has to sort of say that you know, is there a political vacuum that has been created that has allowed you know, groups such as the English Defence League to come around?
We compile evidence about the EDL mostly from searching right-wing blogs, internet sites like Facebook, YouTube, Flickr for photos, videos and statements which show the EDL with the mask off, so to speak. And then we match their names attached to that information with other sources like the 2 leaked BNP membership lists, newspaper reports help, and the UK electoral register as well. There's also a great deal of infiltration, in a sense, what you'd call conventional spying, both online and at EDL demos as well.
بالتأكيد هناك صلات أيضا مع المنظمات والأحزاب القومية والعنصرية في أوروبا. هناك اجتماعات علنية تقوم في بريطانيا وفي أوروبا بين هذه الرابطة وبين الأحزاب والمنظمات العنصرية. أيضا هناك الآن تشارك مجموعات إسرائيلية في المظاهرة. قمت بلقاء بعض حملة الأعلام الإسرائيلية، فهم من الإسرائيليين وتحدثت معهم باللغة العبرية فتحدثوا معي باللغة العبرية ولم يخفوا أنهم إسرائيليون. هم يقولون نكاية بالمسلمين.
The Muslim community came to Dudley when there were labour shortages after the Second World War, and they came and took the jobs that indigenous community either were not available to do those jobs or didn't want to do those jobs.
The EDL, who've got onto the roof to protest apparently about the building of a mosque nearby. We're in negotiations with them, and the purpose of our presence here today is to ensure the safety and minimise disruption to the locals within Dudley town centre.
I just think there's a big problem with its finance as well. It's like a lot of money of £18 million of taxpayers' money to spend on something that's not directly for people of Dudley. It's just like it is actually spreading throughout Dudley and possibly all other areas around the UK. But this one is like saying a super mosque of £18 million. So just, the people of Dudley are just really unhappy about what's going to happen once the mosque is going to be built as well.
They come up a few weeks ago, the police never done nothing. They ruined the town, they broke windows in the shops, broke house, car windows and everything.
We're always entirely happy to facilitate peaceful protests. This isn't the kind of thing that we want to be engaged in. Going into a building, trespassing and then shouting from the rooftops isn't what I would call peaceful.
We've not seen any other group trying to stand up for the right. Yeah, I think the EDL are trying to do people of Dudley more of a favour than anything to stand up against this.
I think it's a great shame because we've always had a very harmonious relationship with all the communities of Dudley. There's never been an issue. So these protests that are happening are very unfair and unreasonable and we don't want them.
The EDL put a call out on their website and on the blogs asking people to come here and support the demonstration against the building of the mosque. So what happened, we had a lot of people come here today, and again the frustration grew in people because the police were not removing these guys off the roof. I think that people are penned in here and they turn not only on the police but also against EDL members.
There's no such thing as a super mosque being built in Dudley. That is a spin that has been given by some of the fringe fascist parties which have been exploiting the issue of the new mosque project.
The only issue has arisen since the planning application was put in for a new mosque to be built close to where we're standing now.
That prompted the leadership of the council to make that statement today, which the local newspapers, which have always been campaigning against the mosque, so they gave the leader's statement a new spin, saying the mosque plans have been scrapped. Well, that is absolute nonsense. That is not true. The mosque plans have not and will not be scrapped. The mosque, inshallah, shall be built.
I think part of the problem has arisen from one or two people trying to make a claim that the largest mosque in Europe was going to be built here and that it was going to dominate the town.
We are not even asking the council for money to build a community centre or a mosque for us. The candidate for the BNP and for UKIP raised this issue. They called it the super mosque. They exaggerated the size of the minaret and they generated a lot of opposition by collecting about 16,000 signatures.
And what the EDL have done is capitalised on this and try to use their kind of racist, fascist kind of ideology to their advantage to build support for themselves.
Despite a positive recommendation from the planning officers that permission should be given, the councillors, in my view, became completely intimidated. They unanimously rejected the planning application.
The planning process led to a ruling being made that they could build the mosque there, but I still felt it would be better to redevelop the existing mosque site.
This afternoon, when the young Asian people came out on the street, there was no EDL around to protect them from. But a small number of that group, only a very small number of that group, decided to throw missiles, etc. at us, and therefore we had to then deploy other resources, including dogs, which we don't do, it's a last resort, but to disperse them as quickly as possible and to ensure the safety of members of the public. And you would have seen there were large numbers of members of the public going about their own business who were caught up in this.
What people see is that the EDL are being protected by the police are not doing anything about it. We try to tell people that the police are not the enemy here, but unfortunately that frustration only grows when they've been penned in for a number of hours and the EDL are still roaming around free.
Well, we managed to safely remove the protesters from the roof and 2 men were arrested. But shortly after that, a large number, maybe 100 or so, young Asian men, youths, came out onto the streets.
The young Asian men took to the streets following reports of a local shopkeeper being beaten up by EDL supporters.
They came out, they say close the shop, there's an EDL around, we close the shop to go home. They attack us 10 people, There wasn't any police there. The police, I told the police, they say you can't go home, that's all.
The police have been doing it all day long. They should be arresting these small-minded idiots that have come up from wherever. They should be arresting them, stopping them from ruining our town. The EDL are small-minded, they're fascists basically, so I don't see why these people, if these people stick up for them, that makes them fascists as well, and I will gladly say that to every single one of them.
Who represents this group in here? Who we can talk to?
Everybody represents everybody now.
Can I ask you then, what are the aims of your group here today? What are you going to do now?
No, they've come to protect themselves, yeah? From the EDL. They've been here since last night, 12:30. You just landed
Can I tell you something?
They've come off the roof, they've gone home, yeah?
They've taken them off the roof.
I've just come from the police station, yeah? Okay. There's 3 females in there putting a complaint in that they've got assaulted in the town centre, yeah? Okay. So why have they got insulted if the EDL have gone home?
Most of the police that come up in riot gear had all their numbers and pips covered up. Why are the police covering up their pips and numbers for? So people don't know their numbers. Now today, on 2 separate occasions, I've seen like 4 or 5 coppers laying into like young kids. They don't need kids, man. You don't need 4 or 5 of you to lay into one kid.
No, I mean, there will be an ongoing investigation, both in terms of what happened last night and in terms of any disorder that took place today. There will be a post-operation investigation into those matters, and that will also include an investigation to any other crimes that were reported during the course of the day.
The anger can always die down, I think, but the long-term effects on the community is what we should be worried about, because ultimately this is a breakdown in community relations between the police and the locals. And I think that, you know, anger will always subside, but with the underlying problems in the Muslim community is still there. So there's, you know, there's lack of money in the communities, lack of education, and there's lack of jobs. And these are the same things that affect people across the country, not just the Muslim community.
After that clash with the local authority, we appealed against that decision, and the government's independent inspector ruled in our favour. But the local authority then decided to go to the High Court for a judicial review, which reinforced our view that the local authority was discriminating against us.
There are 1 or 2 members of the council who they've never declared themselves as being anti-Muslim. They're using the mosque as an excuse to highlight the issue of race.
We still have a long way to go in winning the hearts and minds of the people. And what worries me now is not so much the appeal of the far right, it's the ambivalence and acquiescence of the main political parties who must accept the Muslim community as an end part of their societies.
I'm a proud Englishman, and I should be able to be a proud Englishman. That doesn't mean I've got to be a racist or some kind of little Englander. I actually am a proud Englishman and proud to be alongside proud English Muslims.
I love my country, I love my football, I love my England, I love Liverpool. I have not changed at all, and the atmosphere in Britain's changed a hell of a lot.
The EDL's us versus them rhetoric is a far cry from reality. The story of the McPherson family is telling. Linda is the mother of Douglas and Scott. In trying to deal with the death of their father, her 2 sons took very different paths in life. Douglas joined the British Army and served in Afghanistan. Scott converted to Islam and married the daughter of their Yemeni neighbor.
A few years ago, me and my brother's dad was murdered. It made us, for one, not trust the justice system or the police or anything like that. For 2, it sends you off the rails because then no one's doing nothing about it. You feel you have to do something about it yourself, but then you can't always do something about it yourself, so you take your frustrations out other ways, end up committing crime or just doing stupid things that you wouldn't normally do. To try and get out of this area, I joined the army, and my brother converted to Islam, and it turned out to be something completely different. caused a lot of problems with my brother being Muslim and me being in the British Army. That's the mosque that my brother used to attend in his local area. I used to stand around here and hand out leaflets and stuff like that to people in the Muslim community. We're in Dalston, and this is where he was arrested on that Saturday afternoon. All down here is packed with stalls during the week and at the weekend. My brother, he was just standing around here talking with a couple of his friends when from nowhere, plainclothes police officers with no distinguishing marks jumped on him from nowhere and arrested him in front of everybody and just made an embarrassment of him, and then walked him over to the police station over there where everyone could see it.
Linda's son Scott was arrested in 2010 for taking part in demonstration in front of the Israeli embassy in London to protest Israel's war on Gaza. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison for violent disorder. In court, the judge said he wanted to make an example of Scott. The defense lawyers argued the sentence was harsh. Scott's case, along with others, sparked an outcry. Critics of the judicial system denounced the severity of the sentences, which they said were more severe than those handed to the right-wing extremists arrested for violent conduct at EDL marches.
Generally, across the country, the treatment of Muslim young people in the criminal justice system in this country has not been very fair. If you look at the sentences that our young people are attracting in the courts for similar offences, they are disproportionately higher since 9/11 than they have been in the past.
I've just seen my son in prison. He's looking okay, even though he's not eating at all very well. He's only eating vegetables because the meat at the moment is not halal meat and he won't eat it. All he's done is protest about what's going on in Gaza. The people over here don't understand that. The reason I got through the fireworks and everything and got so angry is that he was actually hit in the face with a shield and he ended up being victimised. I feel sick, to be honest with you. I feel sick that the justice system can do this to my son. All he's done is exercise his right to protest, right? Maybe not in a fashion that the police would like. You know, he's not a radical. He just believes in peace and justice, and he believes that what's going on in Gaza is wrong. From here, this is prison property.
It upset me because obviously my brother's Muslim, and it's like, you know, it's like being personal against him. That's how I sort of took it.
I think everyone in Islamic clothing is looked on as a terrorist now, I'll be honest with you.
I mean, I was the same. I was naive to it all, but myself, I didn't know anything about the religion or anything like that. I just sort of went with what I saw in the papers, on the TV, or been told by the army. But now that I've seen it for myself, it's completely different from what people say. And if anything, it's made my brother a lot more of a better and more respectful person.
So why do they laugh at somebody because they're in Muslim dress and he's white? I'm happy with my son the way he is. In fact, I'm more happy with the way he is now than what he used to be. I just don't... I know, it's this whole country at the moment. I can understand now why my son used to say to me, Mum, you don't understand this country. Even though it's my country, you will not understand this country or what I go through. And yes, I can see it now because I can see the way that they react to my son. No, they're not all suicide bombers and they're all radicals and they all look at us as if we're infidels. No. I have more respect from my son's friends who are Muslim than I have from people who are non-Muslim. So you tell me which sort of company I would be in. I prefer to be in the Muslim company.
Look at my face, I'm my everything that you hate. Half this, half that, born in the UK. You wanna stop immigration, well it's too late. We're here living and there's nothing you can do.
Dennis Karim, better known as Loki, is an emerging talent on the UK music scene.
No no, we don't want them. No, no, we don't want them. No.
He was born into an Iraqi English family. He believes British policies at home and abroad are counterproductive.
The ignorance you bring doesn't make a difference, the flipping pigment of your skin.
Britain has a foreign policy which by many Muslim people, by many Arab people, is viewed as not only dominant, not only aggressive, but racist. And that's the bottom line. When you have a foreign policy which people deem as racist, people within the country are going to feel marginalized and alienated. I have family from Iraq, so when I know that British soldiers are going over to Iraq, how do you expect me to feel in this country when people are justifying the bombing of Iraq?
Benjamin Zephaniah is a British Jamaican writer and dub poet, and an incisive commentator on British society.
I've been listening to lies. I've been listening to spies.
In 2003, he turned down an invitation to receive an honorary medal from the Queen, citing Britain's imperial legacy of slavery. In a rare interview granted to Al Jazeera, he expressed his fears of a backlash at home from Britain's foreign policy.
At a time when the government of this country, who was supposed to be showing leadership, agreed with the government of the United States of America in saying that we are going to have preemptive strike. You know, this is the way to deal with people who are a threat to us. And kids would say preemptive strike, it became a kind of buzzword. We're going to put them out before they put us out, you know. And they had a point. Did this mean that if I walked down the street and I saw somebody who looked like a skinhead, that looked like he may attack me sometime in the future, I have the right to attack him now? If you grow up, when you leave school, you go to a youth club and you had a fight in a youth club or outside a nightclub, the police will come and tell you that that's no way to resolve your problems. Yet the people who are supposed to be most educated, the most intelligent people in the country, when they have a problem, it's not as if they even go out and fight, you know. They send you, who they've been telling not to fight, to go and fight their battles. So of course we have a violent society. We're built on violence.
Something that's quite indicative, I think, of the entire British experience here at home is when Prince Harry joined the army. He was in the army just long enough to refer to one of the other guys in the army as a Paki, and to refer to the people in Afghanistan he was supposedly liberating as ragheads.
After a lot of back and forth, I managed to secure an interview in 2010 with Nick Griffin in this pub in East London. Griffin is the leader of the right-wing British National Party, or BNP. To this day, Griffin remains a member of the European Parliament. He remembers getting involved in politics from a very early age.
Well, I grew up in a very political family. My parents actually met at a Communist Party meeting. They were both young Conservatives, and they'd gone to heckle and ask awkward questions. I think in 1964, at the age of just about 5, was cycling up and down the street of my North London home with Vote Conservative posters on my back and so on. So I grew up with that sort of atmosphere. The key things I can really remember politically was just about Enoch Powell's speech about mass immigration in 1968, and then the couple of years after that, going to Conservative Party meetings as a very young activist, and believing in it all and liking it. It's the liberal elite's use of it as a way of destroying our traditions, our culture, our national identity. So British people feel there's nowhere else to go.
Residents blame past governments for the lack of jobs and the politics of fear over immigration.
They abdicated responsibility. Oh, don't worry, there's only 14,000 people will come in. And then the next term we heard there were 750,000 people. It does give a perception that Barking is changing.
So there's always this threat about the other coming in, which is really weird when you think about Britain, because Britain by definition has always been a multicultural place. I mean, all these different tribes that came here, the Huguenots, by definition, Britain should not be racist.
It is now colonisation that my people are going to be a minority in this country in my children's lifetime, unless something's done.
It's too late. You know, it's too late. The people that are here will stay.
Thanks a lot, guys. Hope you're doing this country well.
And the BNP says what the people want to hear. We'll sort out the schools, we'll sort out your job. But they can't, because the jobs aren't there, and the money's all gone anyway.
You could well be. That's Al Jazeera, that one. You're going to watch Al Jazeera.
Griffin may now be a spent force in politics, with more hardline attitudes emerging on the political spectrum.
I'm just doing the main streets because plenty of cars see me. It's the way to get the most buzz around. He's out and about. So we are right between the two extremes. And on one hand, you have the extremes of people like the Conservative Party, and then the people like the EDL and so on are at the other extreme when they're out on the streets, really confronting the symptoms of an elite betrayal. Occupying the roof of a mosque is a highly provocative thing to do. They should be occupying the roof of the Houses of Parliament, because it's the bastards in the Houses of Parliament who are fouling out this country, not the people in the mosque.
I was beginning to believe that all Muslims are terrorists and Christian terrorists didn't exist. I really did believe that terrorism couldn't be done by governments, not our governments, not white governments.
My dear mother rings me in the middle of the night and goes, "Benjamin, this is it, it's happening, you know." I said, "What's the problem?" She said, "The Muslims are coming." She's listening to a radio station that started talking about Muslims flooding our country, and that day a Muslim moved next door to her.
I think there's a lot of people out there, they're not in close contact with any Muslims or any ethnic people, or if they're work colleagues, they're probably scared to ask them something. But because I'm the cabbie, and I'm in close contact, and they feel they can get away with asking me, they're scared. They're really scared. A lot of them are completely fixed on the fact that this country is going to become Muslim, or it's just going to be a lot of very, very frustrated people.
And she's whispering in the night as if they could hear her, "Benjamin, it's true, the Muslims are taking over." And I said, "Mother, how can you just believe all this rubbish, you know?" When she was being beaten by my father, when she had to run for refuge, at a time when women's refuges in Birmingham anyway, wouldn't take her because of the colour of her skin, she was rescued by a Muslim family. So she knows, definitely, that not all Muslims are the son's version of Muslims. But still, she can be tricked into thinking that, and that just shows you how powerful the media is.
Many British Muslims feel such fears are prevalent and that they have distracted people from noticing the rise of the far right.
I just see it as a people on the bottom of the barrel who are frustrated. Honestly, I've got customers who refuse to, if I could, they'll say avoid this road. And you'll get it from sensible people, honestly, sensible people. I drive one guy, he actually writes for a paper. He lives in a big house, and when someone like him, then you lose heart sometimes and think, he'll say something like, you'll drive past him and say, "Look at this big mosque they built. No offence to you, I love you, you know I'm not racist, but why is the government allowing these mosques to be built in this country?"
The problem with this agenda is it solely focuses on the Muslim community as opposed to some of the right-wing elements of this country who are just as much a threat to this community as some small members from the Muslim community, so a small minority in both cases.
Between the crosses roll through.
The EDL attempts to convey a slick message to gain popularity. It draws on symbols from the time of the Crusades, when Christian Europe united to fight Islam in the Holy Land. It proved a compelling message for Norwegian Anders Behring Breivik, confessed perpetrator of the attacks in Norway in July 2011.
Well, just like the BNP, the EDL is run like a business. Sales of masks, hoodies, shirts, even enamel badges and coach tickets for travelling to protests. Fake Stone Island merchandise, fake remembrance poppies, all those things generate a lot of revenue. It's widely rumoured that an EDL speaker, who's called Alan Lake, is an internet millionaire who's putting a lot of money into the EDL, which doesn't exactly help, its image of presenting themselves as a working class kind of group. Speeches Alan Lake's posted on YouTube also show that he is an extremist.
We are the British public, we pay our taxes, we have a right to democratically assemble in city centres to oppose militant Islam. The truth is, I'm nothing more than a patriot who ain't going to say no.
I've lost count of the number of old men that I've met who said, I fought in the war, and if my mates who died had known what the politicians were going to do to this country, they wouldn't have bothered. In fact, we shot them.
Some of the youngest boys that died fighting for this country were barely 13 and 14 years old. So who remembers them? And do we know about their story? Does the average British person know that so many Muslims fought for this country? No, they don't. Here's the story of so many Muslims that fought in the heart of Italy against the flower of the German troops. They were fighting for Britain. Abdulaziz was someone who came to this country. He became a British citizen. He married a local English lady. And in the early 1940s, he then enlisted for the Pioneer Corps, and he would have been serving in France. And from what we know about his records, he was injured pretty badly in France and brought back to Britain, and eventually succumbed to his injuries and died. And he is now buried in the cemetery Weedy Castle in Birmingham. And people often question us on what did you do for Britain, what did you do for Europe?
I think the changing face of Britain, with migrant communities now going into second, third and fourth generations now, where we have communities settled that are born and raised here, and they're British just like anyone else who's white British, like myself, this is home, I don't know anywhere else, born and raised here. When I go abroad, I'm British, I'm seen as, someone who's from England.
I think that what you have is a huge amount of immigration into this country. Now, particularly with, say, Iraqis coming to this country, these are direct victims of British foreign policy who are coming to this country as a result of British foreign policy. So for British people to then ask Iraqis or Palestinians or people from Afghanistan to go home, surely it's our place to ask you to go home first, because it's the British who have the presence. It's BAE Systems which has the presence. It's BP which has the presence. If you go home, then we can go home.
Until people don't realise that radicalisation is an issue that faces Muslim youth and non-Muslim youth, without this, we cannot move forward because it's looked upon as completely unfair. So the way forward is to treat communities the same, but also for us in Britain to acknowledge the contribution made to this country by so many different members of British society today.
And I see a problem with youth, full stop. There is a problem with young people, disillusioned, young people with, who are perhaps disillusioned with just being bored or not being able to find jobs or or just not being enough kind of inspiration around them towards things which are good.
As a bishop, you know, the majority religious tradition in England is Christian, and the heart of Christianity is, you know, love your neighbour as yourself. And, you know, the call from God in the Bible to do justice, to love mercy, to walk humbly with your God. And I don't think it says, you know, not if they're a Muslim. That's silly.
If you truly don't want to be attacked, then remove your troops from those countries. Aim your pressure at the government and pressure them to remove themselves from lands which the majority of people are Muslim. No to dominance and no to supremacy.
Some people are saying you've got to find a British identity. Where? Which one is it? Is it the Queen's time when she was still German? When the royal family were German? The British identity is like the British weather. You look up in the sky and you know it's the weather. You know today it was raining and now it's sunny and it could snow by the evening, right? You know it's British weather, but you can't really define it, you know, and I think that's what Britain is like, you know. You know when you're British because you live here, you see the whole melting pot. But to put your finger on it and define it so easily, it's impossible.
I am of mixed parentage, so one side of my family is from Baghdad, the other side of my family is from this country. So I cannot literally look at a situation as us versus them. I just look at the situation as humans and human beings and a situation of equality or supremacy.
The EDL does have potential to become a serious threat, but only if British people allow them to become one. You only have to look at Yugoslavia's Radovan Karadzic, for example, to see that concentration camps can return in Europe, and that modern fascists know that huge movements can grow from just tiny seeds. They are dangerous because they're innovative, you know, and they're able to draw attention away from their true beliefs.